Today we're interviewing Baltazar Martinez, and the interviewer is Michael McGregor with the Grand Valley State University's Veterans Oral History Project. To begin, Baltazar, when and where were you born?
I was born in Plainview, Texas, 1952, August 18th, 1952.
And where's Plainview, Texas?
It's in the panhandle of Texas. It's in between Lubbock and Amarillo, Texas. So it kind of sits right in the center of it's kind of the box of Texas, the upper part of Texas.
Mm-hmm. And did you live there through your growing up years?
Yes, sir. I was the first, say about first 8-9 years is I lived there in Plainview, and then after my grandmother passed away, we moved to a little town called Bovina, which is closer to New Mexico, and it's still in Texas, but I finished high school there and graduated, and that's where I was drafted from.
So, in growing up, what did your parents do?
My dad was a farmer, and he said there was nothing better than watching your labor grow in front of you. So he enjoyed being a farmer. And my mom, was stayed at home, but she would go out to the fields and work. Not that she had to, but it was something. And as a little boy, at about the age of 5, I always escaped from my grandmother and would see her working out in the fields, and I'd haul butt and go down there and be out with her. And pretty soon my dad cut a hole so I could be out there with her. Next thing I know is at the age of 5, I'm getting paid also, while my mom's getting paid for doing labor work out in the fields. I thought that was pretty neat. So at the age of 5, I started working in the fields with my mom and my grandfather, and my aunt would come down and join us also. So it was kind of a family affair, and some of the stories I got from my grandfather and my mom, I think, built a lot of that history. That hopefully I can remember some of that passed on to the kids.
Yeah. And what kind of crops would you grow?
Dad had cotton, maize, sugar beets were the main crops that and basically it was maize and cotton. Sugar beets was another big crop that they used, but the two main ones were cotton and maize.
Okay, so after you graduated from high school, you said you were drafted?
That's correct, sir. I was the last draftees in 1972. Matter of fact, when I was in basic, First Sergeant came down and congratulated us and says, told us this, you're the last ones that have been selected to the Armed Forces by the draft board. So congratulations and do us proud. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So you got drafted. What was your reaction to being drafted?
Well, ever since I was a kid, I always, wanted to go in the service, but I never once hesitated that, if I ever got drafted or what my career was going to be in the future. But I thought, I wanted to go into the service. But at the same time, when you're growing up, you don't really know what you want to do in life. My dad was a real good baseball player, and we picked up that habit, playing ball. And I got introduced to football in high school, and I didn't have no ideas of what the concept or the rules or anything what football stood for, other than you got 11 guys on one side, 11 guys on the other side, and they beat the hell out of the poor guy that carries the ball. And all of a sudden I got pretty good at playing football, and Dad had no concept of it either. And Mom, all she knew is that I would come home bruised up, and she thought that I was getting abused at school. So, but I figured a coach of mine told me that was a good way for me to pay through college. So I worked hard at it, and when I was getting ready, my junior year, I had a couple of offers. I just knew how to run away from big guys. So
What position did you play?
I was a halfback,
Okay.
and also played defensive end. So I played both sides of the ball. And they recruited my dad to do the chain gang. He didn't know what he was doing, but they taught him and stuff. And after I graduated, he took continued doing with my brother. Yeah. So, but I figured that I would go to college and figure that out. I knew about the draft, and I knew what was going on in Nam. So, you know, in a way, it scared me, but it really didn't scare me because, you know, when you're young, you're inferior. You know, you're not afraid of anything. So.
Yeah. How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I'm the oldest. I have a brother that's about 5 years younger than me. Then I got a sister that's 4 years younger than he is, and then I got another sister that's 4 years younger than she is.
Okay.
So there was 2 boys and 2 girls. Yeah.
Were you planning on going to college when you graduated and then got drafted, or?
I was
how
planning
did that
to
work?
go to schools to play football. You know, I knew I had to keep my grades up, but I wasn't really planning to stay in high school. And when I started playing football, I had told my mom and my dad that once I get to finish 8th grade, I was going to be a farmer like my dad. You know, but mom kind of, you know, she pushed education hard. She never went to school, and she didn't even know how to write her name, you know, but when it came down to common sense, you know, I could put her up to any professor that's out there because she had that common sense on it. Dad, he only went to the 2nd grade, but he loved farming, you know, and I saw the passion and love that he had for that, so I figured, you know, if he can do it, I can do it. But now once it crossed my mind that that's why I really wanted to go to college or, you know, play football, I was going to be a farmer. You know, that was my first priority in life. But once I got involved in football, I liked it. And Dad had common sense to tell my mom, says, you know, if he wants to play football, he has to stay in school. So if it wasn't for football and the head coach that I had, Coach Huff, I would have never graduated, you know, and I probably would have quit at 8th grade and probably still be a farmer right now.
So did you apply, did any colleges give you offers when you were in your senior year? And the draft, how did the draft impact that?
Back then, if you went off to school, you got deferred, you know, for but you had to maintain a C average or better in order to keep you away from the draft. I had West Texas State University offer me a scholarship. I had Eastern University of New Mexico offer me a scholarship. Eastern offered me a 2-year scholarship to play ball. West Texas University offered me a full ride, you know, to play ball. But when all that was going through, I got my draft notice, you know, and I think my lottery number was 11. So, and they were drafting the first 15 off that list. And by that time, they're talking about winding down Nam too. So, but when I got my draft, Mom took it hard.
So how did you react to it? Here you're going to go to college on a football scholarship, and
I thought I was kind of, you know, proud. You know, back then I thought, I said, hey, I got singled out. Says somebody probably watching me got better things for me to do. He says in the service.
okay.
Yeah, so I figured, you know, hey, he says, not knowing that, hey, he says, there's millions of other guys that were in that same pool that I was in.
Yeah.
You know.
Just by birthday. Right?
Yeah, and I was kind of. Now I think it's like, yeah, it says, I think that's the first time I won a lottery.
Sounds so lucky, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so now you get drafted. Get drafted. Explain the process that happened. You got your draft notice. You had to report on a date.
Yeah, and as soon as I finished school, I went down, and the recruiter came down and said I had to go to Amarillo to the aviation station to do my physical and everything and stuff. And that's the first time I've been with a whole bunch of guys, you know, other than in the locker room playing football, but from all walks of life. And being an old country boy and stuff, you know, it's exciting, but at the same time kind of scared too, you know, because, you know, never been on a plane or anything, you know, and I knew that they were going to fly us. I didn't know where, but I passed my physical. They made it sure that, you know, medically, physically, and mentally I was, you know, good to go. And they put us in a big room, and I don't know how many guys were in there. And all I remember is 4 doors swing open, and you have the 4 branches of service come out. And you had the C7 to come out, and I asked, it says, well, it says, out of, asked the Air Force, how many individuals do you need? The Air Force says, oh, I just need a few, so we'll pick them. So he just random picked two or three individuals out. The Navy says, how many do you need? He says, I'll take, you know, about the same amount. So I knew that just left the Army and the Marine Corps. So I was happy with either one, you know, to go in the service with. So, and it was a gunnery sergeant started one end, and Master Sergeant started at the other end from the Army, and they started counting, and they said, we'll meet in the middle. And when they got to, I was like the odd man in between the Army and the Marine Corps. So my fate was decided by a coin. The gunny and the Master Sergeant flips which branch I was going to go to. So the Master Sergeant won, so I got drafted into the Army.
Well, that's interesting.
So I could have gone either in the Marine Corps or the Army. So, and that's how I winded up with the Army.
Did you, at that time when you're there, did you know the difference between the Marine Corps and the Army, and or just?
No, other than I really liked the Marine Corps uniform. You know, when the gunny came out, you know, he was standing tall, looking good, and Master Sergeant was looking good. But something about those dress blues in the Marine Corps just, you know, make an impact. You know, and I said, man, it says, but I didn't know the payment you got to pay to wear those dress blues until I got out of the Army and went in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
How much more rigid I had to endure in order to be a Marine.
So okay, now you either won or lost, depending on the perspective. And then what happened? What happened?
They loaded us up into a bus, and they took us to the airport, and they put one individual in charge. And at that time, I think I was more afraid getting on the plane because I'd never been on one. And I even forgot to ask where the heck we were going. It wasn't until we're at the airport that Master Sergeant says, you guys are going to Fort Ord, California for training. Shoot, I'd never been to California. And Mom and Dad didn't know where the heck I was going. But they loaded us up on the bus, and, you know, I got on the aircraft. And it's amazing that anytime you show up anywhere, it's going to be late in the evening. You know, we showed up in California, we got picked up, got taken to the barracks, you know, got through in the barracks, and, you know, issued linen, and you still don't know what the heck's going on. You know, they gave us a little something to eat and stuff. Following morning, you know, my baptism started, you know, into the Army, you know, everything. But I give thanks to Mom and Dad because of the way we were brought up, you know, very structured, yes sir, no sir, you know, being polite and stuff. Some of these other kids had a hard time getting adjusted to the structure of how military runs, and for me, I had no problems adjusting. You know, I was like a duck in water, you know. I took to it right away, you know, following orders, you know, doing things. It was a piece of cake, you know, to me. But I looked at some of these other kids that from the big city, they were having a hell of a time, you know. And one of the things I always want to do is this: if I don't get noticed, I don't get put on deep. details or do push-ups. So I was trying to blend in as much as possible, you know. Yeah, but once I started basic and stuff, they keep you pretty well occupied, you know. I did have to, we didn't have a phone in our home, so I had taken I had common sense enough to take the number of the neighbor next to us. So I called and told him that I had made it, or you know, safely there, and I would write later, you know, to Mom. So, but I kept in touch with her, you know, through my family through letters. It's not like now the internet and you know Facebook and stuff. So I tell the kids we did the old-fashioned way through the letters.
Now, in your everybody from Amarillo, that center went out to Fort Ord.
That's correct, sir.
And did you meet? Did you first go to a reception center and
yes, sir.
Other people joined you, or?
Yeah, there was. Matter of fact, when we got in the billets, there was already individuals there from other parts of the state, and I met one short a guy from a little town called Hereford that you know, you kind of pair up with individuals as you're going down, start building that relationship. His name was Alonzo. He was a lot shorter than I was, you know. But I think he did gymnastics, because that kid could, you know, flip around and jump around, especially when we did the obstacle course. You know, the things he could do, you know, going around. I was just glad enough I could get over the obstacles. He was just like flying like a monkey around them. So, but he and I became real good friends. He was from Hereford, you know, and we went through basic together. And then he ended up going, I can't remember where, you know, and I got sent off to, I became a 19 Delta back in as reconnaissance scouts, the MOS they gave me.
I want to back up a little bit on your in your basic training company. Was everybody drafted, or were there some enlistees, or?
There was National Guards, known as no-go kids. There were U.S. draftees, and there were RAs for regular Army. You know, and you know, I can't remember if they had a different category for reservists back then also, but when I was there, I didn't like I feared being called U.S. You know, draftee. You know, it says, you know, you're here, you know, because you were told to be here. You know, but the little longer that I stayed down there, you know, drill sergeants would call you in and go over your history, you know, with you and stuff, and what they have noticed, you know, what you were doing right, what you were doing wrong. And I was kind of surprised that he pointed out that, you know, he told me, he said, you know, he says, some individuals, you know, we have to break in order to become soldiers. And he says, we just need to, he says, we just need to fine-tune you. He says, knock off the rough edges and stuff. He says, because this is what you were born to do. At the time, I was trying to figure out, says, he probably just blowing smoke up my six. But later, the more we went through training and stuff, you know, it's like, you know, I enjoyed it. And some parts were a little difficult, you know, especially when we went to the rifle range, you know, being a farm boy, you know, the person that taught me how to shoot was my father, so it was easy to, you know, zero a weapon and stuff. And I couldn't figure out how some of these kids couldn't even zero or hit it, you know. To me, it was a simple concept. So everything that in basic, you know, it seems like, you know, this is probably what I wanted to do, you know, that Uncle Sam had chosen me for a reason. You know, and that's one thing Mom always says, you know, God has a calling for you, and says, and you'll find it in the most unusual ways. I found mine in basic.
Okay, now, when you were drafted, and when you were in, was your service number your social security number at that time?
Yes, sir.
And but they still used the prefixes US, RA, and that kind of thing with it?
Well, actually, they would just use it for I think accountability purpose, but they grouped us all together because they said they were going to change us from civilian life to bleed OD green, and I thought there was something they were going to give us to drink that our blood was going to turn from red to OD green, you know. So I just kept on looking, you know, and then when I would get cut and stuff, and I said, well, I'm still bleeding red, you know. This is how naive I was, you know, thinking that, you know, hey, so the military, maybe, you know, something changes in your body, you know. But that's one thing they kept on preaching to you, and it says, you know, everybody's OD green now, you know, and that's the way, you know. And I think when I went to drill sergeant school, I think that's one of the things that I finally realized that, you know, is that you break everybody down and then you build them up to be, you know, to think as one, fight as one, and react as one. And that's why they tell you, you know, everybody's going to be OD green, you know.
Now, in basic, did you learn that you were the last group to be drafted?
It was about 4 or 5 weeks after we were in training that First Sergeant came out and congratulated us and told us, he says, you guys are the last draftees. He says there's a couple more groups behind you, but the year that you guys got drafted, it says the draft's going away. So you can either take it as a blessing or you got screwed, you know, with your date of birth. I kind of took it as a blessing, you know, that because I really didn't know what I wanted to do other than be on the farm. You know.
Now, how long was your basic training?
We went 9 weeks. The first week we're at the reception station, you know, getting our gear and stuff, and then back then they were pretty accelerated and doing the training, and then I went to our MOS school, you know, and it was a funny thing about that, you know, you got 100 plus guys in one company, you know, and first sergeant comes out day before we graduate and tell us, you know, what MOS schools we're going to, and he came out and yelled a couple of names out and told them they were going to MP school, and then a couple more names were yelled out. You're going to be medics. Then he congratulated the rest of us because half of us were going to be 11 Bravos and the other half of us were going to 19 Delta school. So I didn't know what the hell was a 19 Delta, you know, and what's the 11 Bravo school. So it wasn't until later when I showed up at Carson that they told us that 19 Delta was a reconnaissance school. Shoot, I thought I was going to, when they taught reconnaissance, I thought, you know, you sit and look at a map and see what was out there. I didn't know that they put you out in the bush, you go down, find individuals, report that back, and, you know, but all of that was new to me.
So during basic training, what was the mix of people that you were with there?
There are a lot of, you know, we had all races there. We had a lot of Hispanics, we had a lot of blacks, white soldiers, a few Oriental soldiers. But I always looked at them as we were all one, you know, I didn't look at them as we were different. And I think that was a big plus because back then there was like racial tensions going on, and the kids that came from bigger cities like New York, Chicago and stuff, they brought some of that racial with them, but they got broke of it quickly there, you know, in basic, and I think they realized that they were just as equal as we were, you know, and we would get punished just like they would get punished just like everybody else, you know. That, and I think I give a lot of credit to the drill instructors because they would always emphasize that we're one, you know, and we were united as one.
Were your drill instructors combat veterans?
Yes.
Vietnam experience?
Yes, as a matter of fact, all of them had been to Nam stuff. Our first sergeant was a Korean veteran, and I didn't know that until he got on a platform and told us, you know, that he was had gone to Korea and then gone to Nam, and one of the things that's, you know, stuck to him is he goes, you'll find that the military is high in tradition. So he says, to pass on to you, my tradition to you is to carry on the torch that I carried on when he was in basic. So it's pretty much telling us that he had to go through the same thing we were going through in order to stand where we're at right now. So it, you know, and to me, I found that comforting that, you know, I didn't, at that point, I didn't think that, hey, you know, about tradition and stuff. So it got me to thinking that, you know, as my family, you know, there's always traditions that we always did. It's like, you know, the military, we got traditions now, you know, high traditions, and you know, anything you do in life, you know, that you wind up, there's a tradition behind what you do. You know, so you either live up to it or you walk away from it, you know. But
Okay, so you left Fort Ord, you went to Fort Carson to begin training as a cavalry scout.
that's correct.
Okay, describe that training. What was your reaction to Fort Carson and the training? And
Well, the only time I've been to Colorado was when I was in Boy Scouts, and when I lived in Plainview, and we went camping up there for a week, and that's the only time that, you know, and it's a beautiful state and stuff, but man, does it get cold. In Texas, it gets cold in the Panhandle, but there it's more wind than anything else, and when it snows, it's more like a blizzard than, you know, but Colorado, you know, and you get, we're going through training. I remember it was in October, and they told us, he says, in Pikes Peak, he says, if you see the clouds go over Pikes Peak, he says, we'll just get a little rain or we'll get a little snow. But if you see those clouds come around Pikes Peak, he says, we get ready because it's going to really, weather really going to get bad. Once again, being young and naive, I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. But we're out there in maneuvers and all of a sudden they says we're heading back to the compound because the weather's going to get bad. You know, the sun was out and see a couple of clouds around Pikes Peak, but I had no concept. Went back, put the vehicles away, and we started cleaning our gear and stuff. And sure enough, that blizzard came in and just snowed on us. There was a young kid from Florida had never seen snow before. And I remember the Charge of Quarters CQ come in and saying, I need a couple of individuals to shovel the snow. A kid from Florida jumped up and said, well, I'll do it. Go at it, you know. The rest of us, we sit down there, you know, and they picked somebody else, and he was as happy as a clam to shovel snow because he's never seen it before. But the training that, you know, I learned how to set up hasty ambushes. I learned how to set up explosives, how to, you know, set up booby traps, you know. And one of the things that I give thanks to scouts is I already knew how to read a map and compass. I already knew how to use those things, and I learned that from scouting. And that was a blessing in disguise because a lot of these kids, you know, especially when we were out at night, the night compass course, you don't really realize an individual's character till you put them out in a situation, you know, out in the darkness, and you give them a map, and they pair you up as threes or fours, you know. And there was this big old Indian Sioux out of South Dakota. His name was Adam Warfield White Eyes, and very quiet individual. And he said, I don't need no map. He says, all I need to do is follow the stars. He says, and I'll get us anywhere we need to go. So follow Chief. So we, like a bunch of dumbasses, we followed him. You know, and we got lost and stuff. We're going around. And then the clouds came in. And so we asked, he said, well, what do we do now? He says, well, the stars are gone. I don't know what to do now. So, but it was, I had common sense enough that that I had taken a look at a map and listened to what they had told us the area we were going to be in, and I picked out some reference points. Where's that? And I remember what they taught us in 19 Delta School in reconnaissance, and what I remember from scouting. I was able to plot an area where we're at and where we need to go, and we weren't that far off where we need to go. So we just humped in the rest of the way and that stuff, you know. We kind of cheated because I found a road that was close by, and we just took the road in, you know, and stuff. But that was one of the fond memories I always remember about White Ice, is follow Chief. And once the clouds came over and couldn't see the stars, he was lost. He didn't know what to do. So, but it was individuals like that that made it fun, you know, and understanding that you start building that partnership and friendship, you know, as you go along the military. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I found. It was more like a family than, you know, second family that was starting to build.
How long did that training last?
That was another 8 weeks, and then we got. I was just a little speck. We got. I got orders to go to Nam, and I wasn't even there, you know, long enough to. Like I tell the kids, I wasn't in there long enough just to piss in my pants and get to, because they were drawing troops up and they had an oversight, you know, more troops than they needed in there, and so I didn't spend the
So
morning.
when did you get to Vietnam then? Now after your after your AIT training, did you have leave to go home?
They I went home for about a week, and then I reported into Travis Air Force Base, and then I flew from there. But it's really nothing that I can say, hey, says I was there, says I just got to show up, see the land, and turn around and send back home.
And that was what was that, 72?
Yes, sir. The end of '72.
What, January 72?
No, it's more around the December area.
I'm sorry, that's right, December. I meant December. So you went to Travis Air Force Base. You flew into where did you fly, into Saigon or?
We went up, if I recall correctly, we went up to Anchorage, Alaska, Japan into Saigon, and
Okay.
then we got turned around and sent back. Back then, you know, you're scared as heck. You know, you just go where they tell you to go.
How long were you in country then?
I say I was only there a couple of days.
Okay.
That's why I tell the kids, so I was just there to look around and see what's going on, be scared, and go home. But once again, Mom said that was like a blessing in disguise. You know, that
So
somebody.
you got to Vietnam and then you got back out.
Yeah, so it's saying, and the thing is, they sent me right back to Carson.
So you went to Carson, and what unit were you assigned to in Carson then?
I was assigned to the 1st 10th Cav.
First to the 10th.
Yeah, and I found out that they told us the history of the 1st 10th Cav was that was the first all-black cavalry unit, known as the Buffalo Soldiers. And it's a very rich history.
Yeah, 9th, 10th, and 11th Cav.
Yeah, and then I felt honored to be part of the Cav unit, and I love being part of Cav units.
Now, they were assigned to the, what,
Fourth Infantry Division, that's correct, sir.
And the fourth was at Carson at that time?
Yes, sir. They had just pulled them out in 72. I think in 70 they pulled the colors back from Nam in for the 4th Infantry Division. They still had scattered units in country, and I think that's one of the reasons I got sent back to Carson, because I think that was one of the units coming back, you know, to join the 4th Infantry Division back at Fort Carson.
Okay, so you were with the 10th Cav, first to the 10th. What was your daily routine with?
Daily is you never get too much training in the military. You're constantly training. We would train with the weapons. I became very sufficient, not just with the M16 rifle. I became very good friends with the 50 cal. And back then we had M60 machine guns, so I became very expert with the 60s, the 50s. We had the M79 grenade launchers. Now they attached them to as 203, which is now the 79 attached to the M16. So all those, and we also did a lot of land nav training. We did call for fire. We worked with we always have a mortar unit attached to a cav unit, and we also get attached to armor units. That's when they started putting cavalry units to scout for armor units, and so we started doing a lot of training, a lot of field exercises. So we would go out. It was not unusual for us to spend anywhere from a week to 21 days out in the field, you know, training. So it was, I liked it because it wasn't boring. You were constantly doing something.
Yes, you're basically, you're mechanized.
That's correct, sir.
What kind of vehicles did you have?
We started out with 114s. It was a 3-man vehicle. It's like a personnel carrier, an armored personnel carrier, 113, but it's almost like cut in half. It would have been a pretty good vehicle, but the bad thing about it is they had a 305 engine, gas engine in there, and it wasn't strong enough for the weight that it had to pull around with it. We were constantly, the vehicle's constantly breaking, or we're constantly doing some sort of maintenance on it. The axles we were constantly breaking on, and we were constantly replacing those. But when you got it running, shoot, you were the envy of everybody else because your vehicle's running. And I remember one time we were coming back from the field, and I was driving, and I had a bug sergeant. His name was Buck, red hair. He was better known as the red-headed orangutan because of his red hair. And and I looked out to my right off the engine compartment, and I see flames coming out. The engine had caught fire, and I went to pull off to the side. Next thing I know, I got hit on the helmet. He yells over the intercom, "Keep driving." So I'm thinking, he says, "Well, we got fire," and he goes, "Don't worry about that. Your responsibility and duty is to drive." He says, "My responsibility is the safety of the vehicle. You keep driving." All right, you follow instructions, you keep on going, But, you're looking at that engine on fire. It's gasoline that fuels it. And all of a sudden he's putting it out with a fire extinguisher. And we're still going on merry way, and all of a sudden the fire breaks out again. The fire extinguisher, comes out. Next thing I know, he's using foul language, because I look back down there, and it's because the fire extinguisher is out. So he's scrambling in the back down there trying to find another one. And we always had two, one close to the engine compartment and one in the rear hatch. So he went and grabbed that one. I kept driving, and fire kept on coming out. We limped all the way in, and we went to the wash rack, and I was getting ready to turn it off. He said, "Not," said, "Let it run." He says, "I'm going to break the block on this." So he took ice cold water and he put it down on the engine. You know, that was the finest running vehicle we had. The block never broke and stuff, and it always ran. So, of all 5 114s that we had 2 that run, but the one that caught on fire was the best running one. Yeah.
What other vehicles did they have?
We worked with later they brought the Jeeps in, and they mounted the M60 on there. We almost looked like the Rapid Patrol during World War II. We modified that, and they strengthened up the suspension, and also put metal bracking on there to make it strong, so we could fire off the side of the vehicle. We tore up a lot of axles and stuff because the Jeep, you know, it's sturdy enough, but the way we treat those suckers, you know, we're constantly breaking something. And then they were talking about bringing personnel carriers onto it, but I never got to see those because I got orders to go to Korea.
Okay, yeah. How long were How long were you with the 1st to the 10th before you got orders?
About 2 years. Yeah, I spent about 2 years with the 1st to 10th Cav.
Okay, so during that time, then you enlisted in the Army then? 'Cause you
Yes,
got drafted for 2 years, right? Yeah.
Yeah, matter of fact, this, when we came back from back to the 4th Infantry Division, I asked the 1st Sergeant, you know, because I knew my enlistment was going to come up, and I asked him if I could change it to regular Army, you know, and enlist, you know, and so I went from 2 to 3 years, you know, as enlisted. So not knowing that, you know, once your contract ends, you gotta re-enlist again, you know. So that was another eye opener for me because I was in Korea and when my enlistment was gonna come due, and I enlisted when I was in Korea, you know, for another 3 years, and hitch and stuff. So I enjoyed. Once again, you know, I wanted to go back overseas because all I got was just a small taste of it. And it's almost like they tangle a carrot in front of you and yank it back and send you back and says, "You're not ready." You know, it's almost like when you take a steak off the grill,
Right.
and you have to put it on because it's not ready yet. It's not, that's the way I felt.
So, right when you got back from Vietnam, you basically went
Yeah.
changed from a selective service 2-year obligation to
Regular Army.
I'll do a total of 3 years. Then you were at in the 1st to the 10th Cav for a period of time.
Yeah.
And then you got orders to go to Korea.
That's correct, sir.
And then you went to Korea and you were with what, the second ID?
Yes, sir. I was with 1st 72nd Army.
72nd Army. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was attached to combat support, and our main purpose in combat support is actually doing support for armor units that will go out in the ranges of, and there in Korea, you know, you can only, the armored vehicles can only have, you know, maneuver around, you know, certain areas because of rice paddies all over the place. So we would go out and scout out the area before they would assemble an area and stuff. We helped a lot with their tank gunnery, you know, go out and set up security for them and stuff.
Now you were you actually assigned to the Armor Battalion, or were with a CAV group that was attached to?
We got attached to the Armor Battalion.
Okay.
Yeah,
You're still you were still a cavalry scout.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, and then I spent 13 months there, and I really enjoyed it. I think
And you had to re-enlist again then, right? While you were in Korea?
yes, sir. First Sergeant Burkhead came down, and he was our first sergeant. I think he had a couple of tours in Nam, and very inspirational first sergeant. Matter of fact, we got in the country about the same time together, and he had a way of sitting down and making you think, you know, that you're a high, valuable individual of a greater thing for a unit. And I feel blessed that he was a individual that I got to serve under. Because as soon as I was there, I hadn't been more there than about three or 4 weeks. He came down and told me, he said, "I'm sending you to NCO school." Okay. And my reaction is, why do I need to go to NCO school? You know, he says, I'm happy as a log now. And he told me, he says, you know, he says, your mannerism, your leadership, and your posture, the way it is down here, he says, you're the type of individuals that are non-commissioned officer material. He says, and I'll be doing you an injustice if I don't go down and give you all the tools to become a good NCO.
And at this time, what was your rank?
I had just become an E5.
E5, okay.
Yes, sir. And he sent me to school down there, and once again, I was able to excel, you know, at the NCO school.
Was the NCO school conducted in Korea?
Yes, sir. 8th Army, they had a little area up between Daegu and Camp Casey, and it was like a little island, and the NCO school was there. And when I was at NCO school, that was about 4 or 5 weeks that I was there. We had North Koreans come down from south, broke through in no man's land, so we got alerted and stuff. And they came down and they called in. When we heard the sirens go off, everybody that was attached to the second ID told us to grab our gear and wait by the gates, and our units were coming down to pick us up. And there was only a handful that were attached. Everybody else had to come up from 8th Army. And we took off, and I had just finished spit shining all my boots, getting my uniform squared away. I was getting ready to inspection for the following day, and we went out, you know, and we started looking for the North Koreans that had come across. And everything down in and in Korea, you got combat loaded everything. The ammo's already on your vehicles and stuff. We also had Jeeps there. I was assigned to my vehicle's a Jeep. We have personnel carriers that would follow us up. We also had a mortar unit to go with us and stuff to provide support for us. So we went out there and stuff. We set up an area out there for security and stuff. And it wasn't too long after we had set up, we heard gunfire, you know, going down and exchanging it. Our sister unit that had been attached, which was on a rock outfit, had located them and stuff. And if they hadn't intercepted them, they would have ran in smack into us, you know, and stuff. But about 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, they have a curfew there in Korea, but because we're out there, we got taken back to the NCO school. My uniform's all dirty, boots are scarfed up from the mud and stuff. We have formation at first thing, it's at 06. So I spent the next couple hours getting everything squared away. So unfortunately that evening I didn't have get any sleep at all. But I got my uniforms, got everything. And it taught me a lesson that, you know, it's, you know, you never know, he says, what's going to happen. So you always have to be prepared, and you always have to have that flexibility that, you know, things aren't going to go according to plans. But I got everything lined up and stuff. I passed my inspection, and I think it made me a better individual by that.
Now, when you were with the 2nd Infantry Division, how far away were they from the DMZ? Were they close? Were they on it?
We're pretty close. Matter of fact, we had radar sites sitting up there, and it wouldn't take us more than about 45 minutes to get up there.
Get
So
up right to the DMZ.
Yeah, so we're pretty close.
And what kind of levels of alert? You said at all times. Did you say that your weapons were ammoed up and
Yes, sir.
ready to go? Was that standard operating procedure for the
Yes, sir.
division?
Yes, sir. Matter of fact, for us being that close and stuff, our General Emerson kept tell us we're the first line of defense for the 8th Army. We needed to hold up anything that came across there to give 8th Army time enough to react and get things set up. But I didn't. The whole time I was there, it never once dawned me. He says, "We're a small force, sitting up there, and we're supposed to hold up all these North Koreans coming down."
Now, what was your now the tour of Korea was just 1 year, right?
That's correct, sir.
It was considered a hardship tour.
Yes, sir.
So, were you there for the entire year tour, or did
Yes, sir.
Would they pull you offline for a while, or?
No, I was up there the whole time. I was attached to the 1st 72nd Armor for that full 13 months. Yeah, and then 1st Sergeant Burkhead was my first sergeant all the way through there. The last 3 months, say about 2.5 months, he called me in and he put me on a special detail. I got to fly around with the aviation unit that was down there. They had a helicopter 58 that was a 4-man helicopter that they got the honor of
Loach, right?
yeah, to fly with. I think the chief's name was McDonald that I flew with, and if I recall, crazy son of a bitch. We would go down there, and I went down there because being a reconnaissance scout, and the training that I had, I was attached to help him, recon the firing lanes before the tank units would open up for tank gunnery, because Koreans like to go down and collect the brass, and they wanted to make sure there was no Koreans inside the vehicles before they opened fire, because they had a tendency of getting in there and stuff. And then we would go down and check the DMZ, make sure there's no breaks in the wire and stuff.
Okay.
But he had a bad habit of, once we finished checking the wire, he'd fly straight up. He just wanted to see what was going up in North Korea. So after we always get down, he said, "Well, let's see what's happening in North Korea," and up we go. He'd take the aircraft straight up. It wasn't until I think I had about 3 weeks left in country when we came back and we're doing our after maintenance on the chopper. I noticed a couple of holes in the exhaust area, and and I asked, "Hey, Chief, are we supposed to have these? Were these?" And he just says, they probably fired at us when we went down there.
Yeah.
So I thought, he says, I was getting too close to going. So I told my first sergeant Burkhead, I think you need to find a replacement to go flying with him. He says, all I need is, a day before I'm supposed to go home, he says, and get shot down. He said, how am I going to explain that to Mom and Dad? so
I would ask you, what was your parents' reaction to now you're enlisting? It looks like you're going to be a longer term in the Army, maybe a career or whatever. What was their reaction?
Well, Dad, he always told me, he says, as a man, he says, you always provide for your family. He says, and he always taught us the work ethic that, he said, I always set the example that I provided for you and your mother, he says, and your brothers and sisters. He said, that's the same thing you got to do. He said, you got to understand what you want to do and do it at the best ability that you can. My mom was a person that she she would say, you know, it says, I did my job, he says, as a mother to raise you the first 18 years of your life. He says, I can't be around to tell you what to do and what not to do. He says, I'm not going to be one of those mothers. He says, what I am going to do, and I always do the rest of my life, is give you advice, you know, and it's totally up to you what you want to do with your life. But as long as you're not beating the heck out of people, getting drunk, he says, or going out, he says, and doing, breaking the law, he says, you have my blessing. He said, I might not like what you do or what you think of doing. He said, but this is what, you know, I'll give you the blessing of what you want to do. Good thing you asked, because before I enlisted, First Sergeant Burkhead says, before you make a decision, because it's a big decision of enlisting, he got me on the phone and he says, you talk to your parents and see what did they say. And that's when I talked, and that's when Mom and Dad told me the same thing, you know, that my dad says, you know, you're a man now, and says you need to start making decisions. You need to know how to provide.
So how long did you re-enlist for? Another 3 years then?
That's correct, sir. And I told Mom, and Mom's, and, you know, she says, all I can do is give my blessing and pray for you. So, and one thing that I did when I was in the service is I would always call my mom on Sundays. That way she know I'm doing fine. When I was in Korea, it was once a month that I would call. By that time, I made arrangements to get a phone put in the house, and I would call and talk to her, you know, a minute or two, just so she could hear my voice and have that comfort.
Just know that you're okay.
Yeah. So, and that continued even through my whole rest of my military career, and that was my way of talking to her, and so she put her at ease.
What kind of interaction did you have with the Korean population?
We always went down. One thing, Sergeant First Class Walsh was my platoon sergeant. He had been there once before, and we didn't know, but he would always buy boxes of candy, and we always get a Jeep ready for him. And I drove him one time, and I found out that he would go down to the orphanage and donate, give the money, give the candy, or he would order things from the stateside to give to the orphanage, what they needed and stuff. So we interacted with the orphanage quite a bit. For Christmas, we provided a lot of, you know, things, and we would go down there and then have toys and stuff that we would bring from the States and stuff. And the population out in the in country, when we go out for maneuvers, you couldn't hide anywhere or set up ambushes or practice that, because you're always surrounded by kids. And you probably know that the sea rats we get, they had that can, we call it John Wayne bars, the chocolate.
Tropical chocolate?
Yeah, that the round ones came in the can. Mm-hmm. And we used to take those out and throw them to the kids because we didn't like them. And those little shits turn around and throw them back at us because they didn't like it either.
Didn't like it. Okay, I'm going to stop the tape now. We've got to change. Okay, other than the experiences with the kids in the orphanage, by the way, how many children were in the orphanage?
I don't recall. There's quite a few because we're always surrounded. Young, I'd say anywhere from 50 to 60 kids were.
Other than that, what other kind of interaction did you have with the Korean population?
Not too much, other than, you know, we're constantly training and stuff. Just trying to learn how their language and stuff. I learned a couple of words. As a matter of fact, I still remember a few of them. You know, saying thank you, and you know, ask them, you know, for certain drinks, you know, and stuff. But I found it very, their culture is almost kind of like a Hispanic culture, you know, taking care of their elders and stuff. And,
Extended family
and stuff.
Okay,
Yeah, so I found a lot of relationship with that, you know. And we had Katusas assigned to us, which were Korean soldiers that spoke English and Korean, so it helped translate with us.
How many did you have in like your platoon or your company?
Like for us, we had for the combat support unit that I was with, we had 3 of them that were assigned. The one that was assigned to us scouts was his name was Choi, and very educated young man and stuff. And he told us that that for school, this was part of their way for them to pay for school. Also, was to be involved in the military and stuff. But it was a required for them also to be in and they always picked the brightest, you know, individuals to be assigned to
the U.S. units.
Right, and but the ROC NCOs were hard as can be. As one of those, sure the heck you don't want to piss them off and stuff, because they're very, especially the Marine ROCs, you know. And we got an opportunity to train with them, and also they don't value life as much as we do. We went out to a range to fire, so the mortar company unit could get their monthly training. We had a range that we were going to set up the fire, and there was Koreans on the side of the hillside that we were going to fire, so we were waiting for them to clear out. We had a ROC officer attached, was coming by, and then he asked us if we had a problem. We told him we were waiting to fire, but we were waiting for the individuals to clear off the hill before we opened up. And next thing we know, he's on the radio, and we hear a couple rounds coming overhead. So he had a mortar unit already set up that he was going to be firing on the other side of the hill. He put the 2 rounds on top of the hill, and then he walked the rounds down and chased the people off the hill.
Oh my gosh.
And then he looked at us, "You ready? Can't China?" And he took off. You know, we looked at each other like, damn.
Wow.
You know, but it was, you know, things like that. Here we are trying to be safe, and to them it's like.
Now, obviously, that was part of a range, right?
Yes.
So were the people, was it like a restricted area? Were the people supposed to go?
No, they were
supposed to be there, right?
No, they're not supposed to be there, but, you know, they...
scavenging for scrap metal and things?
Yeah, they pick up the brass, and you go downtown and you find all these nice... it was always said, you know, if you need something or want something, the Koreans will have it for you. And if they don't have it, you just tell them and they'll make it for you.
Okay. How did you react to the weather? If Colorado was cold.
Yeah, and I think it seems like it's the military sense of humor. They always send me places that it's nice, it's cold, it's hot, it's rainy. So you get all seasons down, you know. Not once that I wind up in a luxury place, you know, like going to Panama, going to Hawaii and stuff, you know. I always wound up, we had all 4 seasons. And Korea's no difference. Korea was brutal, cold, and it's not a lot of snow when I was there, but when that temperature would drop and that wind would blow, didn't matter how much clothing you had on, it'd go right through you. It's what we call the hawk. The hawk come down and undress you. Yeah, so.
Now, while you were there, then now that was in the, what, 73, 74?
It was
75
74
area.
to 75.
How many times were you on alert there? Was that frequent or infrequent?
Yeah, quite a few times. One thing I came to realize is that if you hear the sirens go off and you're running and getting things together, and you go out and you see people in the streets, that means they probably knew there was an alert coming. But if you heard the siren and you went out on the streets and stuff and you didn't see anybody, that means that something's happened that they didn't know about, so it's very serious.
It's for real.
Yeah, it's for real and stuff.
Now, when we say siren, do they have these big, like,
Yeah, it's almost like, you know, like in World War II, you would hear the sirens before the
like an air raid
air
siren?
raid sirens that would go.
Okay.
That's what you would hear and stuff.
And those would be triggered by an event. Were they automatically triggered if somebody like cut the fence, or did somebody have
You know,
to turn them on, or?
An incident had to happen, and somebody had to trigger those things. We didn't have the technology where they would cut the fence and stuff, and then trigger the like what I would see on the wirings when I was in Afghanistan. That you know everything's censored down there. You know that. Not in Korea. In Korea, you know, when I was there, you know, that's why we flew around and checked the DMC for wire breaks and stuff. Everything was done manually then. It was funny too, because when we're down in the village, some of the guys would come back, and you know, you would have to apply for an overnight pass if you're going to stay in the village. I would always ask some of the guys that would come back and says, you know, I thought you had an overnight pass. And he says, Mama Son says, we're having alerts for me to come back in. So how would they know? It's almost like they knew more than
And
what
sure enough, there was an alert,
yeah,
yeah.
than the government, than our security forces in there knew. And it's like, it says, why do we have a security force? We just ask Mama Son or Papa Son, you know, what the hell's going on, and they would get the scoop. It's almost like we got alerted and we drove out to the side we were supposed to, assembly area, and all of a sudden there's Mama Son. You know, she would always have drinks or, you know, food or things down there, and we drive in, and what are you doing here? Oh, it says, I knew last week that you guys were having an alert, so I came and set up before you guys showed up. You know, how the heck did, you know, so it was things like that, you know, that just baffle the minds of, no wonder some of our guys get knocked out the way. Because it's not a secret. Everybody knows except us, you know, where we're going. But when the siren would go out and you see them panicking and running, you know something was up there, out of the unusual. And I think about 2 or 3 times that actually happened. It's when I know I was there only a couple of weeks when the patrol boat got fired up in the waters by North Korea, that we got put on alert that they didn't know about. When the North Koreans came across no man's land, you know, that was the one that they didn't know about. And there was another incident that happened too that they didn't know about, that, you know. And moments like that, you become very very humble and very religious, you know, because you really don't know, you know.
So when that alert would happen, you'd assume wartime footing, wartime positions. Would your unit then redeploy to
Yes,
forward fighting positions?
Yes, sir. I mean, we always had different areas that we were deployed to, and we wouldn't get that word until we actually were on our vehicles and stuff. And Sergeant Walsh would tell us exactly where, what areas we were going. But like I said, you know, it was a secret to us. But sometimes the population knew where we were going, so they were there to greet us when we got there. It's like.
Okay, so when did you leave Korea, and then where did you go to?
They gave you a wish list when you get ready to live, and then I wanted to go to El Paso, Fort Bliss, and I had put Fort Hood in, and I wanted to go back to Carson. those are 3 choices I had put on my wish list. I got sent to Fort Knox. So I didn't know nothing about Knox other than the James Bond movie that they had gold there. You know, so
Goldfinger,
yeah, so that's the only thing I could know about Knox. You know, and the nice thing about that I learned while being in the military is things I would read about or just hear about. I actually got to experience, you know, doing things that I got to understand, you know, the geographics of things, the history of things, and how things get tied in, and what makes the world rotate the way it does, and our government do things the way they do. But when I got the assignment, I left in June of '75, I think, out of Korea, and they gave me 21 days leave to go home, and then I had to report at Fort Knox. And once again, every new area you go to, you know, it's an adventure, but at the same time, it's the unknown. You really don't know what's waiting for you. So I went to Knox, and I got assigned to the 1st Training Brigade unit. I went there as a tank commander to train AIT individuals.
Okay, so you were an AIT instructor. At this time, what was your rank? You still an E5?
Still an E5. When I was there, I think it didn't take about a year and a half later that I got my 6. And once again, I got there, and once again, I had a very good first sergeant that as soon as I got there, he sent me to the basic course for NCO school. And I went to school there, and that was about 4 weeks also that I went to school for there. And came back, and all of a sudden, it wasn't too much longer than he said, you know, says, I'm going to send you to instructor school, which was about a week long. So I went to instructor school for that. And it was constantly, now that I look back, he was building and setting up my leadership qualities, my instruction qualities, in order to be a professional soldier, you know, the setup. So everything that the schools that the first one has set up, you know, for me to go to, was to advance my military career.
So you went to, again, another NCO school, then you went to an instructor school, and then you were then assigned to the unit to teach AIT instructor and what, for tank crewmen?
Yes, it was being a scout,
Okay.
trained scout, and how the scouts tie into tank units and
Okay.
stuff. We also would take them out, and we had, at that time, we had Sheridans that it's like an M60 tank, but with the nozzle itself is kind of short and stuff. And
Yeah, wouldn't they shoot a missile out of it?
yeah, Shillelagh missile
yeah.
out of it, and they also had one that they call Beehive. They throw a shoot out of there, has shiftlets in there.
Mm-hmm.
Only saw that fired a couple of times. Nasty, it's a nasty way of shooting out the human beings.
So
on there.
basically like a self-defense round, it's like a huge shotgun.
Yeah, and then the reason it was designed for that is I know during the Korean conflict they always had human waves that come down, and it was designed in order to shoot out that burst, and it will wipe out a big area because they're like nails. They're about 2 inches long.
They use a lot of those in Vietnam.
Yeah, and my understanding too is they used to clear jungles like that too. You know, just far and just open up an area to go through when it was thick and stuff. But we got all that. That's part of the training that we were going in, and I got pretty well proficient on that. Then I got sent to the advanced school for NCO. So I got all my basic NCO schools out of the way, and it helped out too, because it wasn't too long after that I got reassigned to Echo Troop from Alpha Training Brigade, and that was to I had gotten selected. Back then, you get selected to go to drill sergeant school. You could volunteer, but it wasn't guaranteed that you would go to drill sergeant school. It was a selection committee, and they would look at your profile, your personality, and your history and stuff. So the selection was made for you to go to drill sergeant school, and
how long was that?
drill sergeant school, I think it was about 5 weeks that I went to drill sergeant school.
And where was that? Was that conducted at Knox?
That was in Knox. I was one of the fortunate ones that when I went to drill sergeant school, it wasn't just Army instructors or Marine DIs there also. Reason being because my class contained Marines and Army NCOs going through the school. And the reason they did that is because there at Fort Knox they had a tank company that would train Marines, and that's what the reason they would do. And they, my understanding, they did that once a year, and I was fortunate enough, and it was kind of, once again, another blessing in disguise because I wasn't even thinking about going to the Marine Corps then, thinking I was going to finish my 20 with the Army. But I was fortunate enough to have a drill instructor as a Marine and Army, and I learned everything that needed to know. And one of the things that the senior drill instructor told us is that in order for Joe Snuffy to pass, he has to score 700 or better on the confidence course we have to run. But us being NCOs, ours was 850 or higher, or you wouldn't graduate. And that was the last test that we had to take. But I got to learn drill and ceremony from the ground up again and stuff. And I got real good at it because, I love, nothing better than having a sharp unit, giving the proper commands and stuff, and moving as one, thinking as one, and performing as one. When I got graded on drill and ceremony, I gave all my commands and came back, and my DI came up, and it was a total of 50 points. He gave me 49, and he says the only mistake you made is you're not perfect. And so I got dropped, and he says there's no such thing as a perfect command. He says that's why I'm docking you a point. So it made me humble that there's nothing in the military we do is perfect.
So how long were you the AIT instructor?
About before I went to drill sergeant school, I'd say kind of about a year and a half.
Okay, so you were there, and then you went to drill instructor school. Then you graduated from that. Now, did they put you down as a DI in basic training, or?
Actually, at that point in time, they were talking combined training, basic and AIT together. It was a new concept that they came up with, and they were doing. And that's why I got transferred over to Echo Troop, the training brigade. We picked them up from reception station, and we go through the basic for the first 8 weeks, and then it was a total of I think 13, 14 weeks we would have them. We do them the basic, and then we go through AIT.
Was that concept just for the combat arms people? Because if you were, I know the Army has so many MOSs, and they can't have a basic training AIT for everything.
Yeah, my understanding that they tried it out with the combat arms first, and I think that's, I don't know the other areas. I know that they were looking for instructors DI instructors to, I forgot where, back then they had a certain area just for females to train and stuff, and they had put the word that there were short female DIs, and they put for males. And my first sergeant Smith told me, he says, I was going to put your name in, says, but you're single. He says, and going to a female, basic training area, I don't think it'd be a good idea. So I'd thank him for that. So
Okay, so you were kind of on the first wave of when they combined the training and going to integrate
yes,
it. You
sir.
were kind of one of the first people to do. You've already instructed AIT. Now you went through DI school for the whole thing.
Yes,
and then you were assigned to do that then, right?
Right, sir. Yes,
Now we got the all volunteer army coming in. What did you think during your stint as, combined basic AIT and before that with the AIT, what did you think of the quality of the recruits coming in?
The quality is, at first I didn't think, all volunteer were probably just going to get the lower of the barrel and stuff, but that was far from that. There was a lot of educated individuals that came in. Matter of fact, I remember one cycle, there was a young man had a master's, and he came in, and he was in my platoon that I was training, and just as gun-ho as can be, and you get, even before I became a drill instructor, you get to know how to read people, and I got to, and even now I'm still real good at reading individuals and stuff. But this one individual just, impressed the heck out of me and stuff, and found out that he had a master's and stuff.
Okay.
And it comes out that he came in to be a chaplain, and I asked him, I said, well, with all this, he says, why don't you go straight to OCS, he says, and get your commission and stuff. His reply was, how can I communicate and understand the soldiers' problems if I don't go through it myself?
Good point, yeah.
So he came down, and it wasn't long after he graduated, he went off, the chaplain school and stuff. He came back, and he was going through training there at Knox as an officer. He came back down, and he thanked me. He says, hey, this is what I needed to understand for me to be a good chaplain.
So how long, so now you're assigned to the new training concept. How long did you do that?
About 3 years.
3 years?
Yes, sir.
And that brought us to when? That would be...
Just close to, I think that was 80, and then I was getting ready to...
you already made E6.
Yes, and I was getting ready to get, my enlistment was coming up in 81 when, to come up, and I was thinking what I really wanted to do and stuff. And when I was having classes, I would take Joe Snuppy to classes. I would always have classes next to the Marines. And there was a Gunny LaRue that's sitting down there, and we started talking and stuff. And he made a comment to me once that he says, you're on the wrong side of wearing a uniform. And at the point, and I try to understand, he says, what do you mean? He says, he says, the way you present yourself and your posture, he says, and the way you conduct yourself, he says, you got the makings of a Marine. He says, you don't have the makings of a dog face. And I said, well, what? He says, just look at the way you conduct yourself. He says, you got everything, he says, that says Marine on it. He says, I tell you what, says, the Marine Corps birthday ball was coming up. He says, won't you come as my guest? So I went down there to the Marine Corps ball and asked his guests and stuff, and I was hooked. And I said, he says, maybe you're right, says, maybe when that they flipped the coin when I was going to when I got drafted, it says the coin should have gone the other way, and I should have been a Marine. So that's when I decided, he said, I'm getting out. He says, and I'm
So you
gonna.
decided you were gonna get out of the Army, and this is after, what, 9 years?
Yes, sir.
And you had three-year enlistments, and now you're saying, okay, I'm gonna join the Marine Corps.
That's correct.
So how did that process go?
Well, I went down and I had my first sergeant sit down with me, First Sergeant Smith, and he told me, he says, you know, he says, your enlistment's coming up due. He says, you got a great career. He says, you're on the 7 list. He says, and you're going to make 7 before 10 years in service. He says, and that's very rare. He said, normally it's 10 years plus before you make E7. He says, you're on that 2% of your peers that because you got everything's, he says, they have aligned all the blocks for you. He says, and you've gone and done everything. He says, and you kept your nose clean. He says, and this is the type of individuals we need in the military, you know, is so.
He's putting a hard sell on you, and then you want to go into the Marines.
And he says it's time for you. He says to take that other step and finally make that commitment. And that's when I told First Sergeant Smith that I said I'm really thinking about going in the Marine Corps. And he goes, you know, he says your caliber, he says, is for. He says, I'm not trying to talk to you to go either way. He says, I'm trying to tell you, he says, you're pretty much, you should have been a Marine right off the bat. He says, because, he says, your posture and everything that you do, he says, is you were made to be a jarhead. He says, but we want to keep you in the Army because, you know, we need good NCOs. And he said, but I'll support anything you want to. He said, but now I got to report to the Sergeant Major, and I knew the Sergeant Major pretty good because he was constantly coming over. He says, you can't yell at the trainees like this, you can't treat trainees like this, you know. So he was always, you know, but he said, but you get the best out of them. So I knew the Sergeant Major, and I kind of knew the post command Sergeant Major also. And First Sergeant Smith called me in his office, and all 3 of them were there. The First Sergeant, Brigade Sergeant Major, and the Command Sergeant Major of the post. And they started talking to me. He says, you know, your enlistment's coming up. He says, you need to, he said, we'd like you to stay in. He said, no, my understanding is they're thinking about getting out and joining the Marine Corps. And I said, that's correct, Sergeant Major. And he says, you know, so you're going to lose 2 ranks. And I go, I think I'm still young enough and healthy enough that I can probably make it back up. He says, you know, he says, you're going to be a 7 pretty soon. He says, why do you want to give that up? And I said, I don't know, something just tells me I need to do this. Command Sergeant Major, being the Command Sergeant Major that he is, just some foul language. And I bitch, he says, you're going to come back crying to us. He says, but when you do, he said, we're not going to turn you back out. He said, we'll still take you. He said, but you're making a bad decision, you know. So, okay. But they shook my hand and stuff, and out. So when I got out and I went back to Texas.
Okay, so now your enlistment's over,
Yes.
and now you go back to Texas. Okay.
So I sit out there, and I sit down there, and I sat down with Mom and Dad, and I told them, and Mom was very happy because she says, you're home south. And I told her, I said, Mom says, this is not my life of being a pharmacist. I got too much things that I can do. He says, the way I look at it is, I'm here to help the little guy. He says, and anything I can do to help that person can help themselves, whether here or overseas. That's why you know, you and Dad brought me to this earth. You know, so they understood. So he says, what do you want to do? At that time, my brother was in the Marine Reserves.
Okay.
And I talked to my brother, and I said, you know, I said, I'd like to go in the Marine Corps and stuff. And so I got to talk to the prior service recruiter, and I went to Amarillo, talked to the recruiter down there, and he goes, hell yeah. So he went down, and he says, now he says, listen, these 6 that you're probably going to come in as a Lance Corporal. He says, and you're probably going to have to go through.
Well, Lance Corporal being an E3, right?
Yeah. And he says, we'll probably, he said, you're probably going to have to go to boot camp and stuff. And I go, I'm ready to do all that. So, okay, so submitted the paperwork. And he says, he says, you've been in E6 for a while. Says, that's going to be hard. And I said, well, I think I can. He says, man, he says, we'll submit the paperwork. So I submit the paperwork. And I was working at a slaughterhouse, wait for my time because I just can't stay at home, and wait. So I was working at a slaughterhouse and came home and Mom said there was a message on the phone. So I answered it and it was the staff sergeant from Amarillo, and told me that for me to contact. So I got him and he told me that I needed to come up, my paperwork come through. So I went down and went in there and they looked at me and he goes, the skipper's got questions for you, and says, we're really concerned. And I'm thinking, holy heck, says, what did I do wrong and stuff. He says, came back, he says, we're having a hard time believing the paperwork that came back. And I'm thinking the worst. Mm-hmm. So I went in, met with the skipper, captain, I sat down, and he, first thing out of his mouth, says, I asked him, he says, hey, is your parents or anybody that you know says in office? Oh, no. He says, all my family's been farmers.
A farmer.
He says, and I told him about Dad. He says, I only went to the 2nd grade, and my Mom never went to school. As a matter of fact, she just learned how to write her name, and that's only because Dad was buying a house and they needed her signature. He goes, well, it says, you're not married. It says, are you dating somebody that's a congressman's daughter or a senator's daughter? I says, no. I said, I'm not even married. He says, or dating anybody yet? And he goes, well, it says, I can't believe, he says, you're coming into the Marine Corps as an E6. He says, and we're just going to send you to NCO school. He says,
what's ICO school?
Yeah, it says at Paris Island. He says, and then it says, from there it says, they're going to send you back to Fort Knox. I go, really? He says, yeah. It says, I just can't figure it out. It says, why you get to keep, your rank and you don't have to go through boot camp. I said, well, and then it dawned on me. He says, it says, when I went to drill sergeant school, it was a special drill sergeant school, says that was Marine Corps and Army combined together. So I went through, and he goes, so that's it. He says, so he put the dots together. He says,
okay.
That's...
Okay, so you got to go back in as an E6.
So
okay.
I went back as a staff NCO in the Marine Corps.
And then you were reassigned to Fort Knox.
Back to Fort Knox.
Doing what?
Helping AIT for tankers for the Marine Corps.
And you would you instruct exclusively just Marines?
That's correct, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we had a couple of cycles in there. Matter of fact, Gunner LaRue is still there, and he was getting ready to. Matter of fact, he's the one that picked me up at the airport, and he picked me up, and I was in my office and came down, and he goes, "Well, shit, there, staff NCO says, let a gunny buy you a drink." I said, "We'll stop at the NCO club." He said, "Before I take you down to the billets." And I said, "Well, okay." So I went down, and it's almost, we probably couldn't have planned it better. We had my first sergeant, command sergeant major, and brigade sergeant major. We're sitting there at the bar, at a table drinking, and as soon as Gunner LaRue walks in, and he spots him, and he goes, because I'll still be assigned to the 1st Train Brigade. So he goes, "Wait here." So he goes down and, hey, Gunny, how's it going? You know, they're talking to him. He says, I just came down picking up my new staff NCO that's going to be helping us train the Marines down here. Oh, bring him over, buy him a drink. So I went over. He says, this is Staff Sergeant Martinez. That First Sergeant Smith looked like Popeye, you know, and he had a big smile on his face. Post Sergeant Major looked at me and called me some colorful languages, names, you know, up and down, and the Brigade Sergeant Major said the same thing. He said, well, I'm not shaking his hand, you know, but that's the first time I got a big hug from a First Sergeant and a Post Sergeant Major. And they said, we really think you wouldn't do it and stuff. My Brigade Sergeant Major still wouldn't shake my hand up.
Oh, okay. So how long were you there doing the Armor AIT? Now, were you just were you just doing like cab recon scout or just tank crew?
It was just
operation?
tank crew,
Okay.
and we just tank. We're still doing the M60 rises at that time. We still hadn't assigned. They started putting the fleet with the M1s, but it's still we were.
You didn't have to get your hands on.
No.
So you were there from '81 until.
I was there until '81 from to I think it was '83.
Okay.
And then in '83, I went out to, I got assigned to the I&I staff over in Alameda, in California.
I&I.
Yeah, that's inspecting, it's almost like the Guard here, they're active duty Marines, inspected, shoot, I can't
Like
even think.
Inspector General? Or?
Yeah, that assigned, they're active Marines, they're assigned to reserve units.
Okay, so now you were assigned to a reserve unit as an active duty Marine
Right, that's correct,
in
sir.
California.
That's-
Was that an armored unit? A reserve
No,
unit?
as a matter of fact, that was air defense unit.
Okay,
They fired the Hawk missiles,
okay.
and I went down there and I got slotted into the mortar T section, you know, moving the Hawk missiles around. That's when the new 5-ton trucks were coming out and stuff, so I went down there. I did finish up my enlistment with the Marine Corps and went to the reserve status. So I did that for.
So now, when you enlisted in the Marines, did you enlist for 4 years or 3 years? Or?
I did for 3 years in the Marines.
Okay.
And then I did a 3-year reserve status.
So you went active duty Marines 81 to 83.
Yes, sir.
And okay, now your enlistment's up, so you joined or just transferred to the Marine Corps
Reserves.
Reserve, same place in California
Same
or
place.
back in Texas?
No, same place in California, and then found a job there in FMC. Yeah, it's food machinery. Comes out that they make the personnel carriers and the P7s for the Marine Corps and stuff. So I was in hog heaven because I was back with dealing with armor and stuff. Did that until the end of '87. When I got discharged, and by the time I got and met my wife, and
Why did you decide to get out of the Marines?
well, with the kids and stuff, I always saw the parents, how hard it was for them, to raise their kids and stuff, and
Oh, you were thinking about yourself and
Yeah.
having a family and.
yeah, and my wife is a very strong young lady, and she told me, I'll go anywhere. She's a graduate from Central Michigan University. She's an IT person, and I met her when I was working at FMC and stuff, and she
FMC
in California. Yes, sir. And she knew that I was in the Marine Reserve. She knew the history, and when we got married, I told her she was marrying damaged goods because when I was banged up, from jumping out of helicopters and armored vehicles, being banged around, and she said, you know, she was in for the long haul. But I could see myself not leaving her by herself with kids.
Mm-hmm.
So we had our daughter in '88, had a son in '89, and I think that's right. I hope I got their birthdays correct. And then the year.
So you had your children after your reserve commitment?
That's correct.
Okay. So then you're just living the family life in California.
And I never lost, you know, it's like you have a calling, and I never lost that, you know, that void that was always there, that, you know, something I needed to complete. And the more I thought about it is, you know, and my wife was pretty supportive. She goes, "You miss it, don't you?" And I go, "Well," says, "I do," says, "but I promise, you know, Mom and your parents that I take care of you." And she goes, "Well, if you go to the military," says, "you still take care of us." I said, "Yes," but Mom always told me, says, you know, says, if you're going to stay in the military, it's best if you're single, because you don't want to put your family through that hardship. Because she remembers how my uncle was during World War II, you know, how much of an impact it happened on my grandmother. And that kind of weighed heavy. So I said, you know, I want to. He said, but not until they grow up. But
so how long did you live out in California then?
we lived out there shooting. This is where from 80. I was in California from about 83, 84 to almost 2000.
Okay.
And brought the kids. When Mom passed away, she always told me, says, you know, you need to think about having the kids close to family. He says, there's nothing better than them knowing their grandparents. Mm-hmm. He says, whether here in Texas or in Michigan. And when she passed away, that kind of really weighed heavy on me. And I told her, says, you know, I want to go to back to Texas. And she said, told me, said, I don't want to go to Texas. I said, well, I sure the heck don't want to go to Michigan. And she said, well, we got a little dilemma here. And I said, yeah. So she came up with the bright idea. Says, whoever gets a job first, that's what we'll move to. Not knowing that she was going to do hers through the internet. I did mine the old-fashioned way. I mailed my stuff in.
So she got the job in Michigan.
So I come home one day and she goes, I got a job interview. And so I had a phone interview. It said, things was real good. And I go, where? She goes, in Marshall. And I go, where's Marshall at? And she goes, in Michigan. And she goes, you know, we both agreed to it. He said, whoever get a job first. I said, but I haven't heard anything back in for anybody. He said, well, it's not my problem. So she came back, flew back, and we sat down, and she goes, they already made me an offer. I said, I guess we're moving to Michigan. I said, well, I haven't heard anything from Texas yet. And she goes, it's not my problem. So here I am, so you see who won.
Yeah. Okay, so you moved back to Michigan around 2000.
Yes, sir.
And how did you hear, what was your reaction to 9/11 then when it happened?
Well, it's, even before then, you know, I knew something, you know, you get that feeling, and that's, I don't know if it's because, you know, the military experience and, or from, you know, both from the Army and the Marine Corps, certain things that I'd done in life and stuff, that something just didn't fit right. Something just, you know.
You felt something was going to happen.
Yeah, and it's, stuff like that. But I still was looking at the kids. There were still, and my commitment was still, you know, to family. And when 9/11 happened, you know, first thing they did at work was, you know, go check on your families. And my son was at St. Joe, and well, both kids were at St. Joe at the time, and I went down there, and then I checked on my daughter, and I went to my son, and my son's words out of his mouth is, "When we going over to kick their asses, Dad?" And I go, "Hey, you're in Catholic school. Don't be talking like that." That's okay. We got confession today, Dad. So,
Okay.
so,
Okay.
but I was dancing. My wife knew that I wanted to come back in.
And you finally did then in 2007.
Yeah, because
What prompted you to go in 7 then?
because my daughter graduated. She was a junior, a freshman at Michigan State University.
Okay, so you in your mind, you said, based on what you said before when you first got married, you saw how the service can be challenging if you have children and
That's
you're
correct.
away in separation. So you said, I don't want to really do anything until my children are
Grown.
independent.
Yeah.
And so now in 2007, you decided to join the National Guard, or?
Yes, sir. The National Guard.
Uh,
It was either going to be the Marine Reserves or the National Guard, because I had already weeded out the Air Force and the Army Reserves.
Did you have a problem age-wise at that time?
Well, when I came in and stuff, they looked at my records and stuff, and they were looking more at my experience and stuff, and what I could contribute back to the deal. And I asked him, he says, because I'm here almost 55 now. He says, I still need about 6 years in order to finish up my commitment to get my 20 in. But I'll take anything you can give me, because I just want to go back, and I just wanted to go back overseas. I guess.
Because don't they have an age requirement?
That's
but
correct.
then that's pushed. You can add any time that you had an active duty or
Yeah.
prior service to that. Then,
Right.
And if you fall within that, then you can get in.
So they added up. They calculated the years and stuff, and they said, well, it says, yeah, it says you just barely make it and stuff. It says, yeah, so we can do it. So all of that was up to the recruiter and
Okay.
everybody else to figure it out. Says, I was just happy, and he says, the only thing we got to do is make sure you pass your physical. So I went down, and sure enough, I passed my physical, and I called my wife. My daughter, like I said, was a freshman at Michigan State. My son was a junior at St. Phil. And I recall that it was a Thursday that I was coming back, and I called her, and I says, I'm going back. He says, I passed my physical. He says, I'm going over to raise my right hand to go to the National Guard. And she told me, says, no, you can't do it. And so it kind of drew me back. He says, what do you mean I can't do it? He says, we want to be there. Oh, okay, I got you. And I says, all right, says, and I thought it was just her, but her and my son, we came down to Fort Custer there, went down there, and he was playing football. He had a game that day, and I raised my hand on September 30th, 2007, and joined the National Guard. So, proud to stay again.
So then, were you always with this unit then?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, and I got assigned. Like I said, first they had an E6 slot for me over with the Zappers, 1433rd. That didn't work out. They filled that slot. And I think I had more education on the military side. Had all my NCO schools and stuff, and plus be on the drill field. I don't see too many pumpkins walking around, down here as a drill instructor. But then the recruiter told me, he says, hey, there's a 5 slot. He says, with the 1433rd, and when I went down to raise my hand, he says, that 5 slot's gone. He says, if you want to, we can, tear up the contract and walk away. But the way I felt is that I've been an NCO. I don't need to wear the rank to lead.
Yeah.
I don't need to, know, one thing I learned is when I was going to one of my advanced courses at Fort Knox, we got trained by Israeli officers. And one of the things that stayed with me that whole time, once I finished this course, was that the Israelis really don't wear a ring. He says you always know who the person that's in charge. You know the leadership. And it's, you know this by the way they conduct themselves,
Right.
and the way they present themselves and stuff. So that's always stayed in my mind. And so, and that's the same thing I told the recruiters. Is, you know, it says, I know I'm a staff NCO. He says, I've been on the 7 list on the Army, and I've been on the gunny list on the Marine Corps. He says, I don't need really to wear a rank in order to lead.
Okay. Okay, now you joined the Guard, and just talk me through your Guard career.
Well, it's been interesting. They told me, says, hey, says, I wish I knew there was a CAV unit. I would have gone to the CAV unit up in Wyoming, because I love being a CAV scout. But you told me the closest I could get you, and he said, I can put you in supply. And I said, well, supply says, it's okay, says, it's parts, says, but do you? He said, well, I got a combat engineer. He said, and he told me, you know, you deal with explosives, you deal, with weapons. I go, well, that's up my alley. So I signed up to be a combat engineer, and they sent me here to the 507 headquarters company. And when I came down here, there were a lot of young kids that just finished AIT, and it was prime because what they didn't know about heavy weapons, the 50 cal stuff.
Now, did you come in as a Spec 4? Or?
It's an E4.
Okay.
And right away, for some reason, they still would call me Sergeant Martinez, and they would always look down at my space. Well, it says, you act like you've been a sergeant. And then he said, well, yeah, it says in previous stuff. And
another lifetime.
I said, I was in. But when it came down to weapons and stuff, they right away, first sergeant in training, he understood my background and my combat arms and stuff. So I got assigned, the help with the weapons and stuff. So I've been with the unit, in 2010, I came down and told them that I got deployed through the Department of Defense to not just go to Kuwait, but I hit Kuwait, Iraq, and Afghanistan.
So in 2010 you were deployed to...
Yes, sir.
How long was that deployment?
It was a 6-month deployment.
Okay.
My biggest deal was because we were getting things ready for the drawdown. And mine...
in Iraq at that time? Right?
Yes, sir. And my mission was to verify all the equipment, heavy equipment for the DRMOs to move things around, and what was going to be coming out, what space availables that we had, coordinate the accountability of the machineries that we had and stuff. So
now, was this an individual deployment?
Yes, sir.
Where you the whole unit didn't go?
No, it was an individual thing because of the expertise that I did in civilian life and the expertise that I had picked up here in the National Guard, and plus my prior combat experience with the Army and the Marine Corps. It was like my director says, it's a gift to us because now we don't have to go out and train somebody to do it, since we have the individual that we need right here.
So this was in 2010, and your first stop was Kuwait?
That was my home base. Everything that I did.
You worked out of Kuwait?
Kuwait. And I was constantly gone. I went to Ali and I flew out. First I went to Afghanistan. And I hit Leatherneck, Kandahar, Bagram, came back to
and
Kuwait.
And in Afghanistan, your role was to
accountability of all the heavy machinery.
Okay, if they say they have XYZ bulldozer and you say, okay, there it is.
Yes.
Or, okay.
And in Kandahar, they were just starting to build up a new DRMO in.
Explain what that is.
DRMO is an area where it's a disposition services where they can turn in equipment that the military has for access, or
You mean military units would turn over their surplus
Right.
equipment to this
yes,
point or function or whatever?
and either it gets destroyed or either they put it out for other units to utilize and stuff. It's the same thing that we have here in the States, but it's a bigger volume. It's sometimes a unit will order an overabundance of body armor or overabundance of uniforms or field gear and stuff. That's one of the things that we looked at and maintained and put it out there rather than those units spending more money to utilize to order those. They can utilize them because we already
Yeah.
have them in country.
Okay, so you basically you would get surplus stuff, equipment, materials, supplies, and you'd have a point for it, and that could be issued out to other people, or, as you say, destroyed or backhauled back to the States, or if...
Yeah, and it's there's very little things that are sent back to the States. We try to send a lot of items back to the States because my input to them was that we got National Guard units and reserve units that a lot of, like for tools, for instance, that they can be utilized down here. But make that decision whether they're going to ship them back or not. But my recommendation is ship it back, have a central location, have these units put a wish list and what they need, and if we have it down there, we can put them on aircrafts that are flying back empty. Put them at these locations, and then the units can go and spend the money. They'll go pick them up and stuff. That's less the money that they have to spend.
Because you got to Kuwait, and your first assignment was Afghanistan.
That's correct, sir.
And how long were you in Afghanistan?
I was in Afghanistan. I went in Afghanistan back and forth twice.
Okay.
Yeah,
And how long would on each trip? How long would you be in country?
anywhere from 10 days to 14 days.
Okay. And then back to Kuwait.
Yes, sir.
And was a central database maintained in Kuwait for all the equipment there?
The my connection back here to the States was there in Kuwait.
Okay.
There's things I could do, but for security reasons, I couldn't do them over in Afghanistan.
Okay.
The drawdowns in Iraq was pretty much what equipment that we have, where was it going to need it, how is there stuff there that we could send over to Afghanistan rather than send it back to Kuwait, and then so those are some of the recommendations I did.
Did you do any trips into Iraq then?
Yes, sir.
How many trips did you do there, and where did you go?
In Iraq,
Oops. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's need a new tape. Okay. Now, from Kuwait, where would you go into Iraq?
I would go into JBB, which was known as Anaconda, and then from there I'd branch out to Spiker.
And whereabouts in the country of Iraq were they?
Basically, I fly into Baghdad,
Okay.
and it's all military aircraft I would fly into, and then from there I'd venture out to the others. One of the things that because of my clearance and stuff, they had to monitor exactly where I was at all times. One chief had to notify the other chief when I was inbound, and then once I arrived at the other location, that chief had to notify the chief, and they have zip wrap reports that they would give out, my location and stuff. And I felt, safe while I was doing all this because what better blanket to have than the military, being part of the military that, that you train with all your life, you pretty much. Somebody asked me, it says, what's the biggest difference from when you came in to now? And I said, well, it says the biggest difference is it's just there's not that much difference. When I was a young man, it says the country we were in, it says was jungle and stuff, and here it says it's desert. So all they did was just take the trees out, he said, and replace it with sand, and the weapons gotten better. He says, but the morale, and says, and the fighting spirit of the young men, I think they were higher now, it says, than when I saw in Nam, it says, in early years. He says, but the one thing that hasn't changed is the politics of it. He says, he says is that what I see now of the drawdowns and the cutback and stuff, I saw the same thing back in 73, 74. He says the same thing. He says, you would figure out that we learn from our history.
When the winding down after Vietnam, and now we're having that. Now, when you were in Iraq, were we winding down our mission in Iraq?
Yes, sir.
So it was probably more critical to get a handle on what was there and what could be used. And now, did you have any much interaction with the local population in Iraq?
Only when the trucks would come in and pick up scrap metal and stuff, and and before I said you get that instinct and knowing how to read people, and there was a couple of times that some of the natives that drove the trucks in, I knew for a fact there weren't just truck drivers. You knew that there were insurgents coming out and scoping things out.
A little too attentive to their
surroundings. And it's you get to know their body language, and it's amazing that the body language that just briefly what I saw in '72, what briefly I saw in Korea in '74, that I see now. The body language doesn't change.
Mm-hmm.
They're still the same. People that want to hurt you, they act the same and stuff. And just by looking at that, and it seems like, it's something that should be picked up and taught. This is, because people that want to hurt you are always going to act the same way.
Did you share your observations to anybody there?
Yeah, as a matter of fact.
And were they acted upon?
It's now you mention it, says some of those drivers never came back, that I noticed. I try to keep pretty much tabs on the individuals that would bring vehicles in and stuff, but being that close, it's amazing, that they listen, that they take up your recommendations and stuff. Like I was telling my wife, says, I don't know if it was that I intimidated the individuals that escorted the trucks, my concerns, because I was bigger than them, or uglier than them, or older than them. Says, but they took to heart. This is what I would tell them,
Mm-hmm.
and just key things that to look at, and just look at their eyes, look at the body language that they do, the way they would squat down at certain areas to look at things. He says, they're here to pick up equipment. Why are they checking out the gate? He says, they're here to pick up their safety of their trucks. He says, why are they looking? It says, how fast the patrols is going by. He says, those are things you need to be aware of, what's going down. So it's...
Now, did the equipment they pick up, they'd be transporting it, would it be to Iraqi units, Army units, or other U.S. units? Or?
Pretty much stuff that they picked up was stuff that we had destroyed and stuff, and they had a contract where they were, dispersing it from there. Exactly, that part I didn't.
Okay, this is scrap surplus stuff that
right.
was had no military value
Right,
to it that they would throw.
We had, these sites have what they call like shredders. It's a big machine that you throw stuff in there and just tears it up and stuff, so there's no way you can, you know, put something back together with it, you know, because the machines do a pretty thorough job at doing that, so. But it was just to clean up the scrap and stuff. And the other things too is the drawdown in Iraq to take a look exactly what we needed to get rid of. But there was, especially when I was up at Spiker, was a little more, I think I felt a little more unsafe because a lot of the units had drawn away from the installation that, and they're almost sitting out there by themselves.
Okay.
But
So there wasn't there wasn't much of a concentration of force anymore,
Right.
so.
yeah, but
Did any of the units have any problems then because of that? Did the insurgents take advantage of that, or
you could tell that they're just were waiting.
just waiting for the U.S. to get out?
Yeah,
huh?
and it's by being there and just looking at this stuff, at the locals and stuff, you could tell, you know, a lot of them were just buying time, you know, and it's, but like I told my wife, there's nothing like really getting your blood going and think, God, that, you know, you live where you live. He says is when you hear rockets coming in, you know, you really don't, well, you really don't hear them. It's just the impact that you feel, you know, and just to feel that concussion come down, and, you know, kind of
Was
makes.
that a frequent occurrence? Or?
Not in Iraq, but in Afghanistan, there was a couple of times, especially in Kandahar, that I felt, but when I went into Leatherneck, I felt wrong and fuzzy. I was surrounded by Marines, so I felt pretty good.
Okay, what was your family's reaction to your getting orders to be deployed?
The nice thing about the kids being grown up, they understand. My wife, she was good.
Yeah, didn't have I bet had a good homecoming though, right?
Well, these guys, we were talking about the other day, and I told him, says, you know, the only homecomings, you know, that when you got home is in '72 is just mom and dad. I came home in 2011, wife and kids. But I'm grateful these guys, you know, come home and they.
Yeah.
But I was hoping to go back with them, you know, because I want to close that final chapter, and that I, you know, still got open in '72. So, but I'm alive and kicking, you know. So, but the important thing is
When did they? Okay, you got back at 11, and these guys they deployed, and some of the people here deployed in what 12?
12 through 13.
12, 13. That's what I thought.
And I tried everything to go with them, but something about you're going to turn 60 in country.
Oh, really? Oh, that's what your age barred you from a further deployment. Huh?
Yeah, and
Wow.
they at Sergeant Major Victory, Major Rumbles tried everything for me to go with them. They both, you know, well, Major Rumbles goes, if you're willing and want to go, says, I'm willing to take you, because he knew my experience. And, like he says, I don't think I got too many people in this unit that are going that has the experience and
Yeah.
has the MOSs that you have. I says, it'd be a blessing for me to take you with me, but they said no because of you turning 60 in country. So, like Sergeant Major Victory said, is they were just looking at the age and your rank, says, and have no concept of
Experience.
experience. This is how valuable you would
Or
be
a
towards.
portrait about what that means,
Yeah.
yeah.
But now I'm just waiting to get up front of the medical board. I guess all these years finally started getting caught up with bad knees, bad back,
Oh,
bad
yeah.
shoulder.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but both when I came home, once again, there's nothing like family. That's a good parade to come to. Yeah.
It certainly is.
Yeah, so I kind of closed that chapter, but it's still not completely closed. It's still like something more that I need to do.
Yeah, so sometimes it's, it never goes away, It's there. If it's, if somebody's just in 2 years or
Yeah, and it's,
spends a lifetime.
I give, I was telling, I think it was Sergeant Jones, that the biggest sanity that I got is that I came home to a loving family in 72. I came home to my wife and kids.
It's a loving family now.
Yeah, in 2011. And I think that's what keeps me grounded too.
Sure.
What keeps my sanity is that it wasn't for them. I don't know, how to act and conduct myself. But the man upstairs gave me 2 good kids. My son just graduated from Central Michigan.
Great.
I think he's going to be my politician.
Okay.
And my daughter, like I said, she graduated from Michigan State, so, and my wife puts up with all my aches and pains, so I think I got it made.
And they got a father they can be proud of.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Okay.
But I just, I feel still like I can still perform and still, if I can educate the young men and women, and give them a little experience, what I know, pass on. It's like the first sergeant told me back in '72, it says, we got a tradition to continue to pass.
Pass the flag on, pass the torch on.
And that's why I came back in 2007, because I feel like I still got more to pass on to that tradition for them.
And I'm sure you passed a heck of a lot on.
I think so, because even though I got the specialist rank on there, everybody keeps on calling me sergeant, so I must be doing something, or not threatened, but scare the heck out of them.
Okay. Well, I thank you very much for interviewing. You've had a very, very interesting story, and it was a pleasure listening to your story and you're sharing it with us. I appreciate that.
I was hoping to make it all the way through for breaking down, but I didn't quite make it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you,